All right, so get this today. We're going deep on biofilms.
Biofilms.
Yeah, biofilms.
Mm.
And before you tune out thinking, "Oh, more science jargon, trust me, this is fascinating stuff and actually really important to understand.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so imagine like a bustling city, right? But instead of people, it's teeming with all kinds of microbes, bacteria, fungi, you name it.
A whole microscopic world.
Exactly. And these microbes, they're not just hanging out, they're actually building these elaborate structures like fortified city walls made of this protective slime.
Yeah, it's kind of like their defense mechanism, a way to shield themselves from threats.
And get this, even from threats like, well, us trying to stay healthy, those biofilms can make it harder for treatments to work.
That's right. They can be pretty resilient, which is why they're so fascinating to study.
Okay, so hold on. We've got these microscopic cities popping up all over, and they're making it tougher to fight off infections. I mean, I'm already starting to see why this matters.
Oh, it definitely matters, especially when you consider just how common biofilms are.
So, like, where are we talking about? Give me some examples.
Well, think about dental plaque. That's a biofilm. It's a perfect example of how these communities can form and thrive in different environments.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, and it highlights how biofilms aren't just some abstract concept. They're something we all experience, even if we don't realize it.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then, of course, there's the gut, which is what we're going to really be focusing on today.
Right, the gut. That's a whole other world down there.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is that these biofilms in the gut, they can actually coat the intestinal walls, forming this sort of barrier.
A barrier, what do you mean by that?
Well, imagine it's like a film covering the entire length of your digestive system.
Well, the entire length. That's a lot of biofilm.
It can be, and that's where things get tricky. Because this fortress, as we've been calling it, it can make it difficult for treatments to actually reach the problematic microorganisms hiding within.
Wait, so you're saying that even if we're taking medication or trying natural remedies, those biofilms could be blocking them from doing their job?
Exactly. It's a major challenge that researchers are trying to address.
Okay, so this is getting a little unsettling. I mean, if these biofilms are so good at protecting those harmful microbes, what chance do we have? It feels like an uphill battle.
I understand that concern, but don't worry, it's not a hopeless situation. There are things we can do to address these biofilms and restore balance to the gut.
All right, well, hold on to that thought because we'll definitely get into solutions in a bit.
Sounds good.
But first, I want to back up a little and make sure we're all on the same page about what these biofilms actually are.
Yes, let's break it down.
Okay, so we've thrown around the word biofilm a lot, but what exactly does that mean? Like, scientifically speaking.
Well, the name might be a little misleading because biofilms aren't actually biological in the way we usually think of it.
Okay, so not like a living organism or something.
Right, it's not like a separate creature or anything. It's more of a protective mechanism that various microorganisms use, including bacteria, parasites, and fungi.
So it's like a strategy they've developed to survive.
Precisely. And it's a pretty effective one, too. They basically secrete this slimy substance that hardens over time, creating that shield we've been talking about.
So it's like building a fortress, brick by microscopic brick.
A very apt analogy. And this fortress allows them to withstand all sorts of threats, whether it's changes in the environment, attacks from our immune system, or even those treatments we mentioned earlier.
So it's not just a random clump of gunk, it's a highly organized and sophisticated structure.
Exactly, and that's what makes them so challenging to deal with.
All right, so we've established that these biofilms are like tiny fortresses protecting those harmful microbes, but where exactly are they setting up shop in our bodies?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, they can form pretty much anywhere, but the gut is a prime location. Think about it. It's warm, moist, and full of nutrients, the perfect environment for microbes to thrive.
Sounds like a microbial paradise.
In a way, it is, but for us, it can become problematic when those microbes start forming biofilms and disrupting the delicate balance of our gut ecosystem.
Right, because we rely on that balance for so many things: digestion, nutrient absorption, even immune function.
Absolutely. So when biofilms start interfering with those processes, it can have a ripple effect throughout the entire body.
Okay, so I'm starting to see the bigger picture here, but let's zoom back in on the gut for a minute. If these biofilms are coating our intestinal walls, what exactly does that mean for our health? Like, what are the consequences?
Well, one of the biggest issues is that biofilms can act as a barrier, reducing the absorption of nutrients, even if you're eating a healthy diet.
Hold on, so you're saying that even if I'm loading up on fruits, veggies, and all the good stuff, those biofilms could be preventing my body from actually getting those nutrients?
That's a possibility. And it might explain why some people feel like they're not getting the full benefit of their healthy eating efforts, even when they're doing everything right.
Wow, that's frustrating. I mean, you try to do all the right things, and then these biofilms are like, nope, not so fast.
It's like playing a never-ending game of keep away with your health.
Exactly. And I bet it makes it even harder to address any underlying gut issues you might have, right?
Absolutely, because if those beneficial compounds can't get through, it's going to be that much more difficult to restore balance.
Okay, so this is starting to paint a pretty bleak picture. But before we spiral into despair, let's try to understand what's actually causing these biofilms to form in the first place.
Good point, because if we can identify the triggers, we might be able to prevent them from forming in the first place.
Right, prevention is always better than cure. So spill the beans. What causes these biofilms to take hold in our gut?
Well, there are a number of factors at play, but one of the biggest culprits is diet.
Diet, huh? I had a feeling that would come up.
Yeah, it's not surprising. The food we eat has a huge impact on our gut microbiome, which in turn influences biofilm formation.
Okay, so what kind of foods are we talking about here?
Well, there's a lot of research still being done, but some studies suggest that certain dairy products, particularly those high in calcium, can actually contribute to the hardening of that biofilm matrix.
Wait, dairy. So that glass of milk I'm having every morning could be making things worse.
It's not about labeling any specific food as good or bad. It's more about understanding how different components in our diet interact with our unique gut microbiome.
Okay, so it's not a simple avoid this, eat that kind of situation.
Right, it's much more nuanced than that. There are so many factors involved, like enzyme activity, stomach acid levels, even how well we chew our food.
So it's like a complex puzzle with all these different pieces that fit together.
Exactly. And the more we learn about those pieces, the better equipped we'll be to manage our gut health and prevent those biofilms from taking over.
This is fascinating, but I have to admit, I'm starting to feel a little overwhelmed by all this information.
I can understand that it's a lot to take in, especially when you consider how complex the gut microbiome really is.
Okay, deep breath. So we know these biofilms are a problem, but what can we actually do about them?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, you've got my attention. But before we jump into solutions, let's take a quick break.
Sounds good. We'll be back in a flash to discuss ways to tackle those pesky biofilms and restore balance to your gut.
Okay, so we left off talking about how these biofilms can make it really difficult to address any underlying gut issues. Like, if those good bacteria and nutrients can't get through, how can we even begin to restore balance?
You're hitting on a really important point, and for a long time, the focus was on attacking individual microbes. It was like trying to pick off soldiers one by one without addressing the bigger picture.
Right, like a losing battle almost. But you're saying that's changing now.
Exactly. We're starting to realize that we need to shift our focus. Instead of just targeting individual microbes, we need to target the entire structure, the very foundation of that biofilm city.
So it's like instead of hand-to-hand combat, we need to bring in the heavy artillery.
That's a great analogy. We need a strategy that can actually break down those fortified walls. And thankfully, there are a number of approaches being explored.
Okay, so tell me more about these approaches. What are we working with here?
Well, in conventional medicine, one promising avenue is the use of enzymes. Specifically, enzymes that can degrade the matrix that holds the biofilm together.
Degrade the matrix. So it's like finding a way to dissolve the glue that's holding those bricks together.
Precisely. If we can weaken that glue, the whole structure becomes much more vulnerable.
That's pretty clever. So are there specific enzymes that are particularly effective at doing this?
There are, and there's a lot of research being done to identify the most effective ones. Some of the most promising candidates come from natural sources, like certain fruits and plants.
Oh, interesting. So we might be able to get some of these biofilm busting enzymes through our diet.
Potentially. And that brings us to another approach. Antimicrobial agents.
The antimicrobial agents, so like antibiotics.
Not necessarily. Antimicrobial agents are a broader category that includes anything that can kill or inhibit the growth of microbes. And some of these agents are being specifically designed to penetrate biofilms.
Okay, so it's like finding a way to sneak past those defenses and attack the microbes from within.
Exactly. And it's not an easy feat. Biofilms are notoriously good at blocking things out.
So how are researchers tackling that challenge? I mean, it seems like a catch-22. If the biofilms are so good at blocking things out, how do we get those antimicrobial agents past their defenses?
Well, as I mentioned, some antimicrobial agents are being designed specifically to penetrate biofilms. They might have a particular chemical structure that allows them to slip through those defenses.
So it's like creating a special key that can unlock those biofilm gates.
You could say that. Other antimicrobial agents work by disrupting the biofilm's structure itself. They might target the communication systems that the microbes use to build and maintain those fortified walls.
Oh, so it's like cutting off their communication lines, creating chaos within the city.
Exactly. If the microbes can't communicate effectively, they can't coordinate their defenses, making them much more vulnerable.
I like it. So we've got these high-tech solutions in the works. But what about more natural approaches? Are there things we can do through diet or lifestyle changes to address biofilms?
Absolutely. Remember how we talked about the gut microbiome being a complex ecosystem? Well, just like in nature, diversity is key.
So a more diverse gut microbiome is better equipped to resist these biofilms.
Exactly. Think of it this way. A healthy gut microbiome with a wide variety of beneficial bacteria is like a strong and diverse army.
Ready to defend the city from invaders. Okay, that makes sense, but how do we actually promote that diversity in our gut?
Well, that's where prebiotics come in.
Prebiotics, right. Remind me, what are those again?
Prebiotics are essentially food for our good gut bacteria. They're specialized plant fibers that we can't digest ourselves, but our beneficial bacteria love to feast on them.
So they're like fertilizer for our good gut bacteria, helping them grow and thrive.
Precisely. And the great thing about prebiotics is that they're found in a wide variety of foods that we already eat. Things like garlic, onions, leeks, asparagus, even slightly unripe bananas are rich in these prebiotic fibers.
Okay, so by adding those foods to our diet, we're essentially giving our good gut bacteria a great advantage.
You got it. It's all about creating a favorable environment for those beneficial microbes to flourish. And a thriving population of good bacteria can help crowd out the harmful microbes that contribute to biofilm formation.
So it's like a numbers game, almost.
Yeah.
The more good guys we have, the less room there is for the bad guys to set up shop.
Exactly. And it's not just about numbers. Prebiotics can also enhance the activity of our good gut bacteria, making them even more effective at fighting off those harmful microbes.
So it's like giving our good gut bacteria a boost, helping them build up their forces to fight those biofilms. I like it. But what about probiotics? Where do they fit into this picture? I've always thought of them as the good guys themselves.
You're right. Probiotics are the good guys, the reinforcements for our gut army, so to speak.
So how do they work in relation to these biofilms?
Some probiotic strains have shown remarkable abilities to disrupt biofilms. Certain strains produce enzymes that can directly degrade that biofilm matrix, weakening its structure.
So they're like specialized units trained to dismantle those biofilm fortifications from the inside out.
Exactly. They can infiltrate those biofilms and break them down from within, which is a huge advantage.
This is all starting to sound like a scene out of a sci-fi movie. We've got these microscopic armies battling it out in our gut. We're trying to figure out how to support the good guys.
It's a fascinating world down there, that's for sure. And the research is constantly evolving, which is really exciting.
So it sounds like we've got a lot of potential weapons in our arsenal, but it's probably not a one-size-fits-all approach, right?
You're absolutely right. Everyone's gut microbiome is unique, and what works for one person might not work for another.
So how do we figure out what's best for us? I mean, it's a bit overwhelming trying to keep track of all these different strategies.
It definitely can be. That's why it's so important to work with a knowledgeable healthcare professional who can help you personalize your approach.
Okay, that makes sense. Someone who can help us decipher all this information and create a plan that's tailored to our individual needs.
Exactly. They can assess your gut health, identify any underlying imbalances, and guide you towards the strategies that are most likely to benefit you.
That's reassuring. It's like having a personal trainer for our gut, helping us create a customized workout plan to achieve our health goals.
Exactly. Because just like with any workout plan, it's about finding what works best for you and your body.
Okay, I'm feeling a little more optimistic now. But before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, stress. You said that chronic stress can make us more susceptible to biofilm formation. How does that work?
That's a great question. It all comes down to the gut-brain axis. Our gut and our brain are constantly communicating with each other, and when we're under chronic stress, our bodies release hormones like cortisol.
Cortisol, right.
Hmm.
the stress hormone. I've heard that it can wreak havoc on our bodies.
It definitely can, and one of the ways it does that is by disrupting the balance of our gut microbiome.
So it's like stress is throwing a wrench into the whole ecosystem.
Exactly. And this disruption can make us more vulnerable to the growth of harmful bacteria and the formation of biofilms.
So it's not just about what we're putting into our bodies, but also about how we're managing our mental and emotional well-being.
Precisely. Taking care of our mental health is just as important as taking care of our physical health, especially when it comes to our gut.
Okay, that's something I can definitely get behind. It's a reminder that true health and well-being is about addressing all aspects of ourselves, mind, body, and gut.
Couldn't agree more. And it all comes back to creating a supportive environment for those beneficial microbes to thrive.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. We've gone from understanding the basics of what biofilms are to exploring these complex strategies for addressing them. And the more we learn, the more I realize how interconnected everything is. It's not just about targeting one specific problem. It's about nurturing a balanced and thriving ecosystem within our bodies.
I couldn't agree more. And it all starts with awareness. By understanding the hidden world of biofilms, we can start making informed choices about our diet, lifestyle, and even the supplements we take.
Absolutely. And I think the most important takeaway for our listeners is that they're not alone in this. If you're struggling with gut health issues, or if you're just curious to learn more about biofilms, there are resources available to support you.
Yes, don't hesitate to reach out to a qualified healthcare professional who can help you navigate this complex landscape and create a personalized plan to optimize your gut health.
And on that note, let's take a quick break before we dive into the final part of our exploration, where we'll be focusing on those powerful tools for supporting gut health: prebiotics and probiotics.
Sounds good. I'm excited to delve deeper into that with you.
Okay, so prebiotics and probiotics. I know they're supposed to be good for our gut, but I need a little refresher on how they actually work, especially in the context of all this talk about biofilms.
Yeah, it's easy to get them confused. So let's think about the gut as a garden, right?
Okay, I like that analogy.
So probiotics, they're like planting seeds for beneficial bacteria. You're literally introducing those good guys directly into your gut ecosystem.
So we're adding to the population of good bacteria in our gut. Got it.
Yeah. But I've heard that not all probiotics are created equal. Like, are there certain types that are better at tackling biofilms?
You're absolutely right. Not all probiotic strains have the same superpowers when it comes to biofilms.
Okay, good to know.
Some strains, like certain species of Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium, have been shown to produce enzymes that can actually break down that biofilm matrix.
So they're like what? Equipped with tiny little jackhammers to chip away at those biofilm fortresses? Exactly. They can weaken the biofilm structure, making it more vulnerable to other treatments, or even allowing our own immune system to fight back more effectively.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Okay, so that's probiotics. What about prebiotics? Where do they fit into this garden analogy?
Prebiotics are like the fertilizer for our good gut bacteria. They're specialized plant fibers that we can't digest ourselves, but our beneficial bacteria love to feast on them.
Ah, I see. So they help those good bacteria grow and thrive.
Exactly. And you can find prebiotics in a lot of common foods. Things like onions, garlic, leeks, asparagus, even a slightly unripe banana.
Oh yeah, those are all good for you.
Right, they're packed with these prebiotic fibers that our gut bacteria love.
So by eating those prebiotic-rich foods, we're basically giving those good bacteria a growth advantage.
Mm.
And that helps them outcompete the bad guys and maybe even prevent those biofilms from forming in the first place.
You got it. It's all about creating a balanced and thriving ecosystem in our gut.
Balance, that's the key.
And here's where things get really interesting. There's some research suggesting that certain prebiotics can actually enhance the biofilm fighting abilities of specific probiotics. It's like giving those tiny jackhammer-wielding bacteria an extra boost of energy.
So we might need to think about probiotics and prebiotics as a dynamic duo, working together to break down those biofilms and restore order to our gut.
Exactly. It's a powerful combination.
This is fascinating. But is there any evidence that this approach actually works? Like, has there been research looking specifically at the impact of probiotics and prebiotics on biofilms?
There's a growing body of research, both in vitro and in vivo, that shows promising results.
Oh, that's good to hear.
For example, some studies have found that specific combinations of probiotics and prebiotics can reduce the formation of biofilms in the urinary tract.
Wow, so it's not just a theoretical concept. There's actual scientific evidence to support the idea that we can use these natural approaches to combat biofilms.
Exactly. And as we learn more about the specific mechanisms involved, we can develop even more targeted and effective strategies.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've gone from understanding the basics of what biofilms are to exploring these complex strategies for addressing them. And the more we learn, the more I realize how interconnected everything is. It's not just about targeting one specific problem. It's about nurturing a balanced and thriving ecosystem within our
I
bodies.
couldn't agree more. And it all starts with awareness.
Awareness, right? Understanding what's going on in our bodies.
Exactly. By understanding the hidden world of biofilms, we can start making informed choices about our diet, lifestyle, and even the supplements we take.
Absolutely. And I think the most important takeaway for our listeners is that they're not alone in this.
That's so important.
If you're struggling with gut health issues, or even if you're just curious to learn more about biofilms, there are resources available to support you. Don't hesitate to reach out to a qualified healthcare professional who can help you navigate this complex landscape and create a personalized plan to optimize your gut health.
Absolutely. There's help out there.
This deep dive has truly been an eye-opener, and I hope it's inspired our listeners to keep exploring this fascinating world of biofilms and the impact they have on our health.
Me too. Remember, knowledge is power when it comes to taking control of our well-being.
Well said. And for all you deep divers out there, keep those questions coming. We'll keep diving deep into the latest research and sharing what we learn along the way. Until next time, stay curious.